session. In this session, we're going into the report action email type. So here we are in Business One, and I have a report action of type email report. I have a sales order for sample of this, and I have my Outlook here to see some of the outputs of this. Email report action is by far the biggest, but also the most commonly used thing. So there will be certain areas I will just mention, but not go into too much detail, and there will be dedicated videos about those things because they can take a long time to explain by themselves. So if we look at what we have available, up here is a small keyword selector, and that's because there's a lot of different keywords you can use inside these subject and email bodies. It's not like you need to use it, but it's there for reference, so you don't need to go to the help file and look through all the different keywords down here. So it's just a simple way of showing those keywords. But what you need to do is you need to choose your subject and your body in the email that's going to be happening. So if we just take it as it is right now, without me explaining everything, and just press the email button, let's see what we get. Right now I've set it up to work with Outlook. So in my draft folder, I get this document, meaning you can see it's the same document here, and the PDF is here. And if we look at the subject and body, you can see these different keywords have been replaced with the real thing in the various places. And of course, the PDF that we have will, if I get it over here, show the PDF. So let's go into the different options, and we will see various variations of this. So the subject is just a field like any other, but you can use all these different keywords in order to, for example, say sales order. So object name is one of these objects. If you just take it as object name, it will be in the language of the user running. But if you take object name BP, it will actually be in the language of the business partner in the system. So for example, here I run English, but if I switch to Spanish on the customer and run the same email again, you will see it will actually not change, because when we say business partner, we essentially mean the language that the business partner have chosen for this specific document. So if I switch to Spanish here instead, and not just on business partner level, it should now switch as well if I run one more time. And as you can see, the old one said sales order, now it says sales order in Spanish instead. So whenever we talk about languages, the language is always on the document itself, not on the business partner. You can argue that whenever you make the sales order, it's copied from there, but that's just a common misconception sometimes. So that is the reason I want to show that. Let's close this one and go to the next fields. So the name can be switched, and the reason why we use this and not just write the word sales order is that this can be used across many different documents. So the same report action could be used across multiple documents like sales orders, deliveries, invoices, or you can make dedicated ones. That's up to you how much you want to use compared to how much you want to reuse the different report actions. The same goes for the body. Lots of different keywords you can use. You can also use various different keywords in here. If we look at the email report action, there's keywords like something called date format, where you actually format dates based on the dynamic syntax. You can make tables in here with table-ized data and so on. So I won't go into every single little detail on this, but just take the F1 help and then you will get access to what is going on here. And you can write as much as little as possible, and you have the option to say the body is just plain text, or you can format it with HTML, meaning every line break needs to be a break tag and so on. So that is if you are good at HTML and want to have colors and things in there, it's possible to do. In the same manner, these can actually also be translated. SAP have a translation system. So again, if we take that Spanish user and we want to say Spanish subject should be different, my Spanish subject, I could go in and do this. And if I switch back to Spanish here again and run the system, you will see in the email it now say my Spanish spelled wrong, but that's not the point here. So it is possible. SAP have a little bug that it can show this small icon that is to starting the translations in the same manner you can translate the body as well. So it is possible to actually use the same one and not only have keywords translated, but also translate the entire text if you wish to have it in multiple languages. So that's a possibility if need be. I will switch back to English. And if no translation has been set up, it will always just use what is on the screen. Next to it, we have attachment templates, meaning that we can write what the name of the PDF or the attachment, as it's called, is down here. So we can choose again and again. If we switch languages, it can change as well. And in this case, I'm also using dynamic syntax, meaning 8.0.0. And those knowing dynamic syntax, that is this field up here. You see that by going to system information and hovering the mouse over it. So in the lower left corner, it will say item 8. We have separate e-learnings on dynamic syntax in general, but it can be used across the pond. We also have what attachment types it should be. 99% of the cases people use PDF, but you can technically take a crystal report and turn it into some Excel file, for example. And the pop-up it gave me was that I should change the extension to .excel instead. And if I press again and go to my Outlook, I get a mail again, but now it's an Excel spreadsheet. The format is not something we can control. That is purely up to Crystal Report how it can look. So we can't help with doing specific, or this is not like I want it in Excel. That is 100% controlled by Crystal Report. Next up, we have PDF protection. We will not go into that because you can see it requires some special software. And we will take a dedicated video about that. But essentially, it's about PDF signing and watermarks on them. What is more common to use is additional attachments. And here you can use that next to whatever you put in, you can write some kind of path to a extra file you want to assign. You can write SQL and then a SQL statement leading to a path, so you can get those files in. So it is, for example, possible to get in and get the attachments here directly from the system. I think we have a sample on that in here as well. So let's quickly have a look. Yeah, so you can get the keywords and so on. But I will leave it up to you. If you can make the SQL that can give a path, it can be done. We also have SQL multi, so if you can write a query that gives multiple parts back, it is possible to do. If you don't have the attachments, you can say ignore missing attachments if they're optional. Or you can take all the attachments and comprise them into a zip file and give it add.zip, for example, or whatever. So that's the additional attachments. Then we have recipients, and before recipients we have the preview email. Preview email simply just does that. Instead of you saw me press email button and it was in my Outlook, if I do it like this instead, it will go in and show me a screen up front with data and the attachments and so on, and I can add more and remove as needed different emails and so on, all depending on if you want to do this, or in my case it's drafts over in my Outlook where I could do the additional changes if need be. I tend to not use the preview email, but other people like it a lot. Then we have the recipients themselves, and recipients can do a lot of different things. We have dedicated video on it, but the short version is that you can send either as to CC and BCC. You can choose what email to use. That could be the business partner's default contact person, meaning go in here, whichever one is the default. In my case, it's Eric. It could be the BP header, meaning the email here. It could be the document selected contact person, meaning whoever I chose here. In my case, still Eric, but it could have been a different contact person for the specific sales order. That's also possible. We can do email category. I will not go into that in this session, but essentially you can go in on contact persons and you have up to 5 email categories here. You can, for example, make a one called accounting. And instead of saying I want to send to this specific contact person, I would just say send to everyone from this company who is in accounting, meaning you could send to 3 people, for example, or everyone in sales, or whatever you want. So that is the way that works in email categories. We have, again, dedicated videos about that because there's so many different combinations you can do in this. We have consolidated business partners, meaning if your business partner is set up to run consolidation, either delivery or payment, it can take the email address of the consolidated business partner instead of the regular business partner. So that can be done on header level, default contact person, and email categories again. It can also do it with fallback, meaning that if you have a mix of business partners that have consolidation and not consolidation, it will try consolidation first and then go back to the business partner if there was none. Or if you want to be 100% in control, you can go in and say direct email. You can write a dedicated email, or you can use dynamic syntax, meaning this syntax. You can use the doc key keyword, meaning getting the primary key, because you can use SQL colon here and write a SQL statement that gives an email address back from whatever special field extra data down on business partner you use in order to do this. So lots of different options to do CC, BCC. You can put as many of these in as you want. Next up, we have the delivery methods. And we have something called client delivery method and server delivery method, meaning that whenever you are inside the Business One client and do the delivery from either the window or our mass delivery, it is possible to use the client delivery method, while if you have our automated system with schedules, it will use the server delivery method. So there are bit different in that Outlook is only in the client delivery method because you don't really use an Outlook as such on a server, and it certainly is not running while a Windows service is running. So that system is gone here, but else they are more or less the same. We have Outlook as the primary delivery method. So if you have Microsoft Outlook, we can script edit to put it into your draft folder, or send it directly if you want to, or put it into a draft folder and display it immediately. So I could do it like this instead, an email, and it will just pop up the screen with that new draft. So very, very simple to use. Many people tend to use Save as Draft because they just want the email ready. If they use from client, and on server, they just have everything automated. If you don't have Outlook on the machines where the client is, you might want to use either SMTP or Exchange, meaning SMTP is the normal way of doing things. You put in an SMTP server, you put in some credentials, you put in what from mail it should be from, and then you send your emails using SMTP. The drawback of SMTP is, of course, that you can't rely that things are being sent. Outlook can see if your email bounces. Microsoft Exchange can do that. SMTP can't. But email is email. Normally, it works. So many people who don't use Microsoft will use SMTP for this. And all you do is you make an SMTP and then choose it here. In a similar manner, you can use Microsoft Exchange. Exchange can be set up in two different ways, either some basic authentication where you just give some servers and some credentials. But in modern Office 365, it's used doing something called modern authentication. And we have a dedicated video about how to set that up. Essentially, you need to go into your Azure AD and get some client IDs and tenant IDs in order for you to do this. But way too much for this video. But Exchange is probably the second most used feature in here, Outlook being the first. But Exchange can be set up in the same manner. And the good thing about Exchange is also it can use drafts and doesn't need to send directly like SMTP needs. And there's also something called personal exchange. We have direct e-learning on that, but the short version is that if you just use Exchange and set it up, every single delivery will come from one shared mailbox, for example, info@yourcompanyname.com. And you might want to have them personalized, that it comes from the different sales employees. And in such a case, you say use personal exchange, meaning we use the same Exchange server, but instead of using the credentials you put in here, you would instead use the credentials of the individual person. So every time you turn on personal exchange and press for the first time, the user will be asked to give their credentials, and then it will know that GM Bosswork is this Exchange user, and the different sales employees will be the different users. So that's a system to be set up. Again, dedicated videos on it for more details. On the server side, it's exactly the same, SMTP and Exchange, Outlook not being part of this, but else they work exactly in the same manner. If you only use print delivery from the client, you don't need to set anything up. But as soon as you set up automated schedules, and I will recommend that, you set up the server delivery method as well. The final thing we have in here is group emails, meaning that you can group on various levels. It wouldn't really make sense in terms of a sales order here because it's just one document. But if we went to our mass delivery system, where we could go in and take all the various sales orders, many of these sales orders will be to the same customer, Earthshare Corporation 2 here. So we could go in, and if we take these two and say OK, then in our Outlook you can see it sent 2 emails to, in this case, Bob Markley, which is the primary contact person of this. Let me get rid of these so they're not in the way. But it might be annoying, or your customer wishes to say, can I just get all of them in one big go? Well, you can. So if we just leave this open so we can run it again, we could go in and say we want to group them on business partner level. Oops, we just need to switch back to our Outlook so the system knows what we're doing. So we could group, and there's various grouping levels. Again, this topic itself takes almost 30 minutes to go to every single configuration of what it is. So we have a dedicated video on that. But the short version is, let me take some business partner level here. And let me switch back to PDF so we can see it as the normal setup. Go back in. And when I mass deliver two parameter technologies again, the 4 and the, oh, now they're gone because I already handled them. So I just need to get them back from here so we can get the same. It was 3 and 7 we sent to Earthshaker. Let's send them again. And over in our Outlook, you can see it now sent only one mail with 2 different attachments. And now you need to, of course, begin to think about, you can't just really write the number of the sales order in your subject. You instead need to go in and say, here are your invoices. So you need to be more in the plural sense, because it can't really combine everything in the system, especially if you send, for example, 100 sales orders like this. So that's up to you to choose the wording so it's more easy. But the main thing is you can group things together. But again, see the dedicated video about grouping because it's a huge topic. I can show you can just press this link and it will go directly to this video. And as you can see, okay, 16 minutes of going to all the different scenarios of document level and so on, how different mails react and in various different ways. So that is everything in at least a fairly deep level. Some of the features again is in even more details in dedicated videos, but again, a hugely powerful customizable tool in order for you to send your emails from the system. So with that, thank you for attending. See you in the next one.